It's a sad day if you're a Tory Lanez fan. I've tried my best to stay silent over the last 2 years and just grab as much information as I could from outside sources, news outlets, media platforms that I had a bit more of an expectation and hope for, and covering something like this with a little less bias to over time update my knowledge of the situation so that come trial time, I'm going in with as much information as humanly possible and not being swayed by my own bias. Though in the beginning, I'd believed that Megan Thee Stallion was telling the truth, I don't take joy in the fact that the jurors also believed what she was saying as some like sense of joy or hoorah or hooray. Because at the end of the day, she was still shot and was the victim to an assault. And just because Tory Lanez is about to be sentenced within the next month or two doesn't mean that the ramifications of this assault end here. Once everyone who's been covering the situation stops covering it, there still comes a level of rehabilitation and reintegration into the world without most people or a lot of people thinking that you're lying about being assaulted and taking the side of someone that you've claimed as your abuser. Tory Lanez has officially been found guilty in the case of shooting Megan Thee Stallion. And just like in the video that we talked about where Kanye was on Drink Champs, basically arguing the technicalities of what could have led to George Floyd's death, even though it is documented what actually caused his death, and my refusal to go over why he was wrong, because I was at the point in my mind in believing that if you wanted to believe that Kanye West was telling the truth about that and you wanted to have doubt over whether or not George Floyd actually died the way he died, there's nothing or no amount of convincing that anyone can do to take your mind off of not wanting to believe the events happened the way that they happened. And so the same thing reigns true here. I feel like going over the case with people who already want to believe that Tory Lanez was not the shooter is pointless. It's irrelevant and a waste of time. So it won't matter if I tell you that Kelsey's original statement to prosecution was that Tory Lanez was the shooter and she corroborated majority of Megan's story only 2 months ago. It won't matter that blatant attempts at taking out of context the information that was provided in regards to the weapon that was used to shoot Megan Thee Stallion were constantly reposted and spread by major media outlets, despite having to do just 5 short seconds of fact checking that'll inform you that his fingerprints weren't on the magazine but instead were on the weapon itself, and that there were too many fingerprints on the weapon, so it was labeled inconclusive. It won't matter the signs of guilt that were indicated by Tory Lanez's text message to Megan Thee Stallion the night of the shooting. It won't matter that Kelsey originally put the blame on Tory the night of the shooting as well. None of these things will matter because you want to believe what you want to believe. I just think it's a waste of time trying to pretend as if we're being objective about our opinions here. I'm not going to try to argue you down. If those are your beliefs, then those are your beliefs, and me wasting my time trying to provide all these different hows and whys and theories isn't going to change that. But what we can agree on is that Tory Lanez was found guilty. And I would be up here saying the exact same thing if he were found innocent. So to everyone, and there were a lot of you niggas that were sitting back and saying, I need to wait for the trial to happen. I need to wait for justice to be served. I'm going to let the court do its job. Now that it's done its job, why do I have to deal with skepticism and all these other theories about possible jurors being paid off? And that's still crazy. And this sets a dangerous precedence for young men in the world. No, I think it sets a slightly decent precedence for young men who decide to shoot people in the world, but that's just my opinion. Never before do I feel like the level of accountability for media outlets has been at such a low bar for what is defined as like good journalism. But within certain communities and within certain spaces, it's become publicly acceptable to trash Megan Thee Stallion. And so in these spaces, multiple rumors have been spread without being corrected within the communities that these media outlets tend to breed, and have time and time again decided to display some of the most gross negligence in fact checking and objectivity I've seen in a long time. Now, to sit up here and say that there are media outlets that don't have their own biases, I'd be lying. Obviously those don't exist, but I think there are definitely media outlets in covering this case and in covering the news in general that do a much better job at hiding where their allegiances lie, as opposed to the ones that have covered this Megan Thee Stallion case. And the reason in this case why it's so egregious is because most of these media platforms know and accept that Megan Thee Stallion is the victim to the crime, but refuse to allow their bias against her to crumble underneath the overwhelming fact that she was the victim to a shooting. Even in search for what they believe to be the quote-unquote truth, have allowed their want for Megan Thee Stallion to become the face of victims, praying so desperately for a not guilty conviction from Tory Lanez to progress the narrative that there are many more women who lie about being assaulted than the media is willing to let on. For some weird sense of vindication from the online narrative that men are trash. They've allowed this entire case to be the stepping stone for man versus woman as opposed to just Tory versus Meg. Actually, the state of California. Not someone who actually goes outside and interacts with both men and women. I'll tell you, the gender war is not real. You don't need to die on the hill of disbelieving every single woman that comes forward about an abuse story about a man that you don't even know. And granted, you could say the same thing about a woman and remain neutral. But this is a case where I've seen just so much blatant, weird hate being thrown at somebody who we all acknowledge is the person who was shot.
How does Tory have non-fingerprints on the gun and gets guilty on all charges? Everyone has an opinion, but this weird.
That's not
because I know trash music is coming since and all the nutrags toxic females going to eat this up. The Dax thing I see too.
Just Burner, calm down the misogyny for a second. I hear what you're saying, but the way the question you just asked lets me know that you get your information from Twitter. His fingerprints weren't on, it was a part of the gun that his fingerprints weren't on. But his fingerprints on the gun itself were there. There were too many other fingerprints on the gun as well, which is why they labeled it inconclusive. And I remember, once again, that is the story that I'm disappointed about. That is the story that I'm disappointed about because media outlets put shit like that out there and then niggas who don't do any research for themselves just eat it up. This is the same. Well, it's not the same. It's not the same. But when George Floyd passed away, well, was killed basically, the amount of niggas who were chanting the shit that Kanye was talking about in that Drink Champs interview, oh yeah, technically he might have actually died from the fentanyl or from the actual other drugs he was taking. No, nigga, they have it documented what he died from. Because you get your information from Twitter and from fucking media outlets that aren't certified and don't have any like degrees in journalism or anything like that, you believe a couple frame or a couple word tweet, which is why the niggas felt like they could get away with that shit yesterday of, oh yeah, let's just say Tory Lanez is not guilty, even though we have no proof of anything. Niggas like you who said that shit just now, let me know that you feed into it so much that these niggas think that they can just post anything on a situation that's real and get away with it with no consequences. Oh, my bad, we just made it wrong. We fucked up. Let's delete the post. No, nigga, it's not that easy. It's not that simple. You don't just get to throw out misinformation, besmirch somebody's name, insinuate that they lying, and then go back, redact it, and be like, oh yeah, my bad. You don't get to do that. People pick and choose which portions of the witnesses or the people who went to testify, they pick and choose which parts of it they want to believe versus which parts they don't. It's just Tory Lanez is not the nigga that I'm willing to put my reputation on the line for. Like, if this is the nigga, if this is the hill that you're gonna die on, there's much better niggas to do it with. Obviously, as a person who's against prison as a form of rehabilitation, I don't enjoy Tory Lanez being put behind bars for however long he's ultimately going to get, which for some people who are overreacting to the sentence, he's not going to get 22 years. He's probably not going to get 10. Realistically speaking, he might get 5 to 7, and I think if they go easy on him, he could get 3. Him getting 10 is probably unlikely, especially for the type of situation that this seemed to be. I think the most reasonable take, based off everything that I've been able to gather, is he did it by accident, but initially drew the weapon to intimidate. Don't change the fact that she got shot. But people pretending like this is somehow like an attempted murder charge, that's not what it is. Even though I'm against that form of rehabilitation, I think that there should be genuine forms of rehabilitation to address what seems to be an anger issue on Tory Lanez's part, as we've seen time and time again through the history of his career with conflict with Travis Scott, August Alsina, rapper Dax. Preference in this case is just closure for the victim. That's it. I'm also disappointed in media outlets for allowing misinformation to fester and spread within their community and purposefully not addressing it out of some weird sense of solidarity with Tory Lanez. There's a lot of content creators and even some news outlets that I will never be supporting again because of them publicly antagonizing who they knew was a victim. That to me is weirdo shit. Even rappers, the biggest, decided to take their shots. Also keep in mind, I don't like the justice system. I think many times, especially as it pertains to black people, they get it wrong. It just so happens in this case, I believed Megan Thee Stallion before this case ever went to trial. I actually congratulated Tory Lanez during this entire accusation process for constantly and consistently releasing new music because I believed that he was releasing so much material in anticipation for his likely demise. The possibility that he would be found guilty and serve some time, some significant time. And the music that he released in the meantime may hold his family and his peoples over while he was in. But with the risk of him being deported, not being able to tour, and even the slight possibility of his music being removed from streaming platforms, it's looking like his career is about to take a massive nosedive. I got nothing else to speak on. I'm glad that she's working toward getting some closure. Never believed that Tory Lanez was the hill that you should be dying on. You can ultimately move on to the next guy to feed your insecurities into until they ultimately become your next martyr. Tory Lanez fans, don't do nothing to yourself, okay? Go be with your family. It's Christmas, okay? It's Christmas. Let all that anger go. There's no conspiracy. Niggas who had common sense were on the jury. That's all that happened. That's how I feel. Go be with your family. Okay? Go love on some people. It's okay. It's gonna be fine, bro. It's gonna be fine.